Hello, Garland Nixon here. All kinds of things going on. We got the Crimea Bridge attack. We've got good old Dark Brandon. He's up to no good as usual. And by the way, there was a little something going on with Julian Assange today. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and as always, there's plenty to talk about. Prepping for tomorrow. I'm going to be on the George Galloway show tomorrow at 8:20 p.m. apparently London time. What the heck time is that? What 3:20 maybe 3:20 our time, Eastern Standard Time. But I'll be on Galloway, so I'm looking forward to that. I always have a lot of fun on the Galloway show. All right, let's get down to business. Oh, I can't see my comments. I can't get down to business if I can't see my comments. Let's get down to business, and we're going to talk about the Crimea Bridge. We're going to talk about Joe Biden. Let's start. That's what everybody's chatting with, talking about. Well, you know what? I'll start with this. I'll start with this. And because this is critical, it's very, very important. Today was a great action for Assange Day. A lot of people came out in Washington, D.C. at the Department of Justice building. There was a nice crowd there. I really enjoyed it. I spoke for a couple minutes, but we had lots of people. Scott Ritter was there, and Chris Hedges was there, and Jill Stein was there. I mean, there were a lot of people there. There were people there from antiwar.com. The libertarians were in the house, shall we say. So there was a lot of people there. And I really had a good time hanging out with the people, talking to the people, and, just kind of pumping everybody up so we can keep going. We know it's, tough times for Julian Assange, but we're going to continue to support him, and we're going to continue to push back against the mainstream narrative. And we're going to, work to protect the rights of everyone. I mean, the bottom line is this, and this is a big part of it. There's so many, but I will just comment on one part of the Assange issue, and that's this. The United States does not have jurisdiction everywhere in the world. The United States has no right to say that a person who is an Australian citizen, who's doing something in England, who's doing something in Australia and in other countries, none of Julian Assange's actions, they didn't take place here. So we have no right to say we're going to go around the world and we're going to tell, we're going to arrest people any more than we could say, well, you know what? In Louisiana on Highway 10, the speed limit is 55 miles an hour. So we're going to go arrest someone in Belgium because they're doing 56. No, that's not how it works. But there's so many, but I just wanted to touch on that one angle. Okay. Julian Assange, very important. Keep him in, on the, keep him, always on the front burner, always be standing up for Assange. We're trying to get some justice there. All right, so let's start with the Crimea Bridge, because that's what people want to hear about. That's what people want to talk about. And I have my thoughts on it, right? Got up this morning. We know that the Ukrainian leadership has wanted to attack the Crimean Bridge, right? We also know that there are neocons in the United States who have been saying for I don't know how long, who have literally been saying, we should attack the Crimean Bridge and blow it up. You know how the neocons are, they're friggin' nuts, right? So we know all that's been going on. And so what happens, apparently some kind of successful attack was launched on the Crimean Bridge. Apparently it wasn't nearly as successful as the Ukrainians start, excuse me, Ukrainians and outside in the cold all day. So I got to cough a little bit. But it apparently wasn't nearly as successful as the Ukrainians and the Western media has argued. Apparently, the bridge, there was some damage to some spans. We really don't know completely what happened for a number of reasons so far, but it appears that the bridge is open again for some level of traffic. There's apparently more than one span, and apparently there's another area that was damaged, and I've heard numbers anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. But apparently right now traffic is able to traverse the bridge, and they're going to be able to get it fixed. And here's the way I see it. Now, let me add this. it's still mysterious as to what happened. Apparently, there was a truck involved, so we're told. We're told that there was a truck involved. We're told that this truck exploded and that there was a train that happened to be serendipitously going along the bridge near the truck area where the truck was, that this was carrying diesel fuel. Sorry, it's kind of late. I'm doing a lot of yawning and stuff, but ignore that, okay? And diesel fuel, stuff like that. And apparently, as we're told, the truck blew up and the diesel fuel was ignited and you had some kind of a fire, and that was, caused significant damage. Okay, let me throw a couple things at you that we've got to be straightforward with this. We've got to be honest with that. Look, bottom line is this: we don't really know what happened. This is in time of war. The Russians have released a story right now. The fact is this: if in fact there was a truck crossing and apparently the Ukrainians have taken credit for this, right? Responsibility, whatever you want to say. But here, think about this: if there was a truck crossing the Crimea Bridge and that truck blew up, that would mean there's only a couple of options. Number one, it was autonomously driven. It was an electric vehicle or something, and nobody was in it, and it was an autonomous truck, and it blew up. That's a possibility. I'm not saying there's a very high chance of that or a great probability. I'd say less than 1%. It was not but I'm saying here are the possibilities. One, autonomous truck, nobody's in it, because apparently we have no indication of who would be driving this truck. Two, the person was driving the truck and it was a suicide bomber, and they drove across and they ignited the truck and they gave up the ghost for old Slava Ukraine, or if you're talking about Zelensky, I guess it would be Slava cocaine. But they Slava Ukraine themselves into the next world and kabooey, and they were a Mujahideen spirit warrior. That's a possible two. Possible three, let me give you another one. Some schmuck, they're like, hey dude, yeah, you love Ukraine, yeah, here's what we're going to do, or whatever. Maybe he didn't even know. Hey, dude, yeah, want to make a few bucks? Yeah, why don't you take this train across the bridge? Oh, sure. What are you paying? Oh, 5,000 rubles. Sounds good. We'll give it to you when you get to the other side of the bridge. Oh, sure. How much do I get now? You're not really getting any right now, but take my word for it, you're going to get what's coming to you real soon. You can trust us. We got your best interest in mind. Oh, okay. Gee, thanks, guys. He gets across. Some poor ignorant schmuck with no knowledge whatsoever of what was about to happen. He gets out into the middle of the bridge and kablooey. So it's possible that they sent some poor schmuck out there and blew him up, and he had no idea what he was doing. Or let me give you another. So those are the possibilities. Let me give you another possibility: that it's a bullshit story. Here's what I mean. Let's be honest. Apparently, I don't remember the name of the Russian ship, but a while back in the Black Sea, there was a Russian ship. It got hit by missiles, and the Russians said, no, 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 we had a fire on board and blah, blah, blah. Well, eventually we found out the damn thing got hit by missiles, right? Look, here's the way I looked at it. It's war. In war, in the same way that every time I turn on look at the Washington Post, I hear something from anonymous officials. Anonymous officials, Putin has had in the last couple of months multiple assassination attempts. He survived. He's had cancer. He's had Parkinson's disease. He's fired everybody around him. The people around him have tried to fire. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, every other week, an anonymous intelligence official in the Washington Post has some cockamamie, implausible story about disruptions in the Kremlin, right? Well, who'd believe them? It's war, and the U.S. is at war. It has a proxy war with Russia, so they're going to lie. In the same way, it is possible that it could have been something else. There could have been a bomb set on the train, right? There could have been something else. And it could simply be that the Russians are giving us a story that's not true, that they feel for strategic reasons it's in their best interest to give us. Keep in mind, right now, I feel like there's more to the story than they're telling us, but who knows? You know what I mean? But here's the bottom line: it's war. I don't expect during a war, I don't expect the Russians or the Ukrainians or the US to tell us the truth every time. They're going to look at what's happening and they're going to give us a story that's to their strategic advantage. So let's hold tight on that story. The only thing that appears to be real right now is A, the bridge was attacked, B, it wasn't destroyed, C, There are cars traveling on it now, and D, it can be repaired in some way, shape, or form. That's kind of what we're going with right now. That's what it appears to be. Now, let's talk about the significance of this. Look, there's a couple of things going on here. Here's the way I look at it. I was thinking about that today. One of the things I've noticed lately that is not really healthy is that a lot of people that are watching this war are watching it like they watch a football game. I remember, back when I was younger, young guy, and me and a buddy of mine, we had an apartment, right? And two young guys with apartments. We drank plenty brew and we watched plenty sports. And needless to say, all our boys came over and they watched sports with us, and we'd be betting on. I mean, it was a young guys, macho guy kind of stuff, right? We were having fun, right? We were doing what a 20-some-year-old guy does, has fun, right? And one of the things that I remember is, so there'd be a football game. And of course, you can bet on the outcome, but we bet $1 here, $2 there, right? You'd come in there with $25, $30 every Sunday, and you bet $1 on this. I bet $1 he misses that kick. Oh, I bet $1 they get a first down. We bet on that kind of stuff, right? Dollar says he gets a first down. Dollar says he doesn't. That guy doesn't catch the next pass thrown to him, whatever it was, right? And it was fun. But what you would do is, here's my point. Because you were watching the game and you were into play by play, you would literally bet on a play. It'd be like, it's 3rd and 3. Are they going to get a first down? I got $1. I got $1, says they do. I got $1. You put your money down. Did they get the first down? No, darn. And then somebody grabs all $3, right? Whatever, right? It was goofing around. But my point is what? My point is, we watched it play by play. We bet on it play by play. There was the whole game going on, and that's what really mattered. But we went play by play to have fun and bet. Here's my point. People are watching this war for whatever position they're taking or whatever, right? And they're watching it play by play. Oh, let's see. Well, let's see. The Ukrainians took some town that I've never heard of before, and I can't even pronounce. Oh, no, I feel bad and upset today. Let's say I'm on that side. Okay, what happened? Well, the Russians took a town that I can't pronounce and I've never heard of before in my life. It's a good day. Yay. Oh, the Ukrainians hit the Crimean Bridge. And you're like, oh, but the Crimean Bridge is still working. Yay. But the Ukrainians took a hamlet in East Bumfuck. Oh, but they lost a lot of people when they took the hamlet. Yay. You know what I mean? It's literally getting to that point. And I understand it because people are very emotional. And I understand that because, number one, if you're in the West, you've been propagandized to the point where your brain basically has the consistency of mashed potatoes, very watery mashed potatoes, not even the good kind. In fact, those flakes, the dried mashed potatoes that you add water to, and they're not really like potatoes. They're almost like sawdust and water. Your brain has that consistency, right? That's the consistency that your brain has because you've had so much propaganda that you've got a flaky mashed potatoes, sawdust tasting brain. That's where you are, right? So you're like, okay, Putin must be stopped. You don't understand the history. You just know you've been told Putin must be stopped. So every time you wake up and it's like the Crimea Bridge was destroyed. Right. You see that everywhere on MSNBC and what have you. You're like, yes, it's all over. The Russians are on the run. The Crimean Bridge was destroyed. And then, of course, when you find out that there's cars traversing it, then you're like, darn, but we'll get them next time. You're living day to day. And meanwhile, there's somebody else on the other side said, oh, man, we're screwed. What's wrong with Putin? The Chinese bridge is destroyed. How come he's not doing what he needs? The Crimean Bridge. Darn it, I'm upset. Right. And you have these people on these emotional roller coasters from day to day to day. I learned something getting a haircut years ago. Got a haircut. And in the midst of the haircut, I looked at the mirror. Holy crap, right? If that was the end of the haircut, I'd be looking like a clown. But I realized something. Don't look at the haircut in the middle of the haircut and expect it to be a finished product. If you look, just understand, wow, that looks really weird. Let's just wait till see when it's over. And then when it's over, you look at it and I can say, hey, you missed there's a little sprig sticking up over here. And I've had that happen where I went in the bathroom, like last time I got a haircut, went in the bathroom, looked in the mirror when I washed my hands. I'm like, hey, what the hell is that sticking up there? For God's sake, I went back to the barber. I look like a Martian here. I got an antenna. One little piece of hair was just sticking there. And he's like, oops, boom. He cuts that off. I'm good to go. Right. I am rolling, got a decent haircut. I'm feeling good about myself. Right. All right. That's what's going on. The people are so emotionally invested in this thing that from day to day, now it's gotten to a point from day to day, they got to look and they got these maps and they got to look at the map. They don't know what the hell's what, but there's more red over here, then there's more blue over here, then there's more yellow over here. And it's like, hey, they took Lima. Oh my God, not Lima. Anything, please, God, tell me they didn't get Lehman, right? You don't know anything about Lehman. You never heard of Lehman before in your life, but you found out that the Ukrainians took Lehman. You don't even know if anybody's there. What is it? The size of a cul-de-sac, right? And then everybody left, but they took poor Lehman. God knows you take your hat off, you hold it over your heart. Let's drink one for Lehman, right? But you don't know what Lehman is, and you never heard of it before the Ukrainians got Lehman, right? That's kind of where we are. Everybody's like, there's and they're all towns that we can't pronounce, towns that we never heard of, we know nothing about, but we're on this emotional roller coaster. And as soon as a lot of people saw that the Crimean Bridge was hit, well, that's it, we're done. And then they're like, what's wrong with Putin? For God's sake, why this man? How come he won't respond? Here's what I think. As far as the Russians, in my opinion. And I think that it makes sense to me. A lot of people don't like it, and I understand it, but this is kind of the way I think, so it makes sense to me. And maybe I'm wrong. I think the Russians are like this. Look, we are planning on ending this thing. We're going to bring our troops in. We're going to bring our gear in. We're going to bring all the things. We're going to get set. We're going to get staged. The word stage. We're going to stage all of the people and machines we need, and then we're going to put our foot directly in their asses. That's what we're going to do. We're going to stage everything that we need, and we're going to kick them in the ass, right? And I think that's their plan. And I think what they're saying is this, because people say, oh, they hit Crimea, you've got to respond. In my opinion, just again, my opinion, I think the Russians are looking at it like that. We are responding. This is what we're doing. We're going to set this thing up and we're going to act. And if they attack whatever, if they take Liman, if they whatever, some other burg that you've never heard of with a clump of houses, they take that too. It's not going to distract us from our plan. At this point, we are bringing in X amount of tanks and armored personnel carriers and people. This is what we're bringing in, and this is what we're going to do. What you're talking about is the information where they have done something and it's all in the Western papers, and the Russians are like, and you expect us to respond because it's all in the Western papers, and people in Russia got their heads hung low. Oh, I feel bad. We lost Liman, right? And I think the Russians are like, yep, we lost Liman and we abandoned Liman. We left. The Ukrainians are coming. We ain't losing nobody over stinking Liman. We're out, right? They're doing what they have to do. I think they're really calculating what they're going to do. What we're going to do is, right, because this is the way I think. I'd be like, I've made a decision what I'm going to do, and I will not be distracted by the Crimean Bridge, Liman, Freeman, Smeeman, I don't care what you call it. I ain't getting distracted. I'm going to set this thing up, and I'm going to make my move. And I think they are. Now, keep in mind something. Let's not be naive. If I can figure that out, then the neocons can figure that out. And so they're probably going to figure, okay, we got a plan. We're going to counter that. Their problem, I think, with countering that is this. This is the perfect storm for Ukraine. Here's why. And it's of their own making. If the Russians, as I suspect, are patiently and just patiently setting their chessmen up, setting their equipment up, setting everything up for the attack that's coming. If they're doing that, right? And their plans are on whatever day we go, and that could be December 1st. Let's just throw a number. December 1st, we're going, right? I think that part of that is they're not going to be distracted by shiny objects. I think part of it is, I think the Ukrainians would like hitting the Crimean Bridge or taking Liman or whatever the hell little burg they've taken. I think they would like that to throw the Russians off, so the Russians kind of slack up on prepping for the big hit, and they can get them to react now. Look, let's piss them off. Maybe they'll react now. Here's the thing about it. I think, and again, I think the Russians have this figured out. One of the things that one of the tactics that the Ukrainians have been doing, that the Americans have been doing with Ukrainian bodies lately, is throwing them at the Russian artillery with reckless disregard, right? A reckless disregard for human life, as we say in the legal field. So what's going on is, because they're throwing these Ukrainian bodies at Russian artillery, the Ukrainians have been taking some horrendous losses. And even here recently, in the last few days, apparently, my understanding is the Ukrainians, in moving on some of their things that they've been doing, they've been taking some pretty bad losses. They've been really losing their reserves. So again, it benefits the Russians if they kind of chill out and start building. And they're prepared for Ukrainian offensives. The Ukrainians, attack, and they knock out. Sadly and unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, they kill a lot of Ukrainians. Right? I'd rather just a diplomatic end to the war, but this is what it is. This is what's going on. We'll continue. So what they're doing is, really, at the same time they're building up, they're chewing into the Ukrainian reserves, so that by the time they get ready, let's just throw out December 1st, November 15th, whatever, maybe November 1st. By the time they get to make their move, right? The Ukrainians will have exhausted a lot of their reserves in these ham-handed, a bunch of these ham-handed offensives where they lost massive amounts of people, and they will be less able to launch counteroffensives against the Russians when the Russians attack. They will be less able to stand up when, whatever kind of barrages, way it be it missile or whatever. So I think that time is not on the Ukrainian side, in that they're losing people, and the Rush. Here's the thing. Think about this. You got two sides here, right? One side is having massive losses as they launch these ill-advised attacks. Just, throwing people out into a field with artillery landing around them ain't a good idea. You're losing a lot of people. So one side is losing a lot of people. The other side is bringing in 300,000-400,000 people. Right? One side's losing people, the other side's massively increasing their troop presence. I think we know how that works out. I think we can look at that and say, well, the advantage of the numbers. See, the Russians have had the advantage in firepower, in standoff attack weapons, right? Wherein the Ukrainians have simply had numerical advantages. So they can throw human waves out there, and you're going to wipe most of them out. They'll climb over the bodies and get some advantage on the field, and they'll take Liman or whatever the hell, the latest bird they took was. The Russians has been standoff weapons, technology attacks. Okay, here's my point. Firepower. The Ukrainians' advantage is quickly evaporating, and it will be turned inside out when the Russians bring in hundreds of thousands of reserves. So not only will they lose their advantage, the only advantage that they had will be turned over to the Russians, will be completely become the Russians, right? So again, I'm not talking about Liman today. I'm not talking about the Kerch Bridge right now. I'm talking about the long game of the war. I'm talking about, how does this war end? And then we don't have to talk about the latest. Something else will be blown up tomorrow. Something else will be shelled tomorrow. Something's going to happen. Same with Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Something good, not good. I mean, something big, something newsworthy. That's the word I'm looking for. Something newsworthy is going to happen 3 or 4 times this week. And some people in the West are going to go, hooray, we captured Liman. And then somebody who in the Eurasia will go, oh darn, we lost Liman, or they hit a bridge, the Antonovsky Bridge, or whatever the hell bridge. There's going to be successes and there's going to be failures, but the whole time the successes or failures are going on a day-to-day basis, the Russians are still building up, aren't they? And the Ukrainians are still losing people, and the balance of power is being turned inside out. That's what's going on. So yes, you can get hung up in the day-to-day stuff of who blew up who and who attacked what, right? But the balance of power is turning inside out. Now, if Garland were there, I would think 2 things. If I were going to do the Russians and I were going to decide, it would be based on 2 things. Number one, what does my military tell me? Military, what day are we going to go? Right? We will be ready. We'll have the people there as of November 1st, whatever the day, right? But the also thing I would consider, look, war is politics also, right? I'd look at the midterms. I'd say, I think we want to launch it before the midterm. I think we want to smack these people in the head bad. right? And that would put a little more pressure on Joe Biden. That would put a little more pressure on the West. Now the Democrats are going to be like, oh, what's happening? So if in fact, so it's possible, it is possible that the launch of the Russian offensive, such as whenever it is, we're expecting one, whether who knows, may not be one. I don't know, but we're expecting one, right? But whenever that happens, whatever happens, it's possible that it could be timed for a political objective. However, let me say this. That's what I'm saying. That's what Garland's saying. But as you've heard me say this a million times, you are what your record says you are. It appears to me it is also possible that the Russians are going to act simply based on a military timeline with total disregard of other factors such as politics. It seems right now they've been acting on a military timeline and they haven't been acting as much on politics. So it's possible they'll just say, what day will we have our troops ready to go? Your troops will be ready on October 31st, Halloween. Boo, on that day. And we're going to tricks. We're going to have a lot of tricks and no treats for the Ukrainian military. You know, I got that. Look, I'm just throwing that out there. I think that's what could happen. But we don't know. Are they even going to launch an offensive? We have no idea what's going to happen, and that's the nature of the Russian military. They're tight-lipped. It's radio silence with those people. Interesting thing going on too. So good old Elon Musk, one that a lot of people seem to think he's some kind of an internet savior. I don't. I think he's a billionaire, and I don't trust him. Oh, Musk. So he's been, excuse me, providing these Starlink, whatever the hell, satellite access for a lot of these Ukrainians. And apparently that is not working right now. I suspect it has to do, the Russians are very big on electronic warfare. I would suspect there's some jamming going on there. I think there's some jamming going on there. And what's interesting is one of the things that happens during a war is that both sides get to play with various types of equipment and see how it works. And it looks to me like the Russians have been playing with some stuff. And one of the things they've been playing with is they're being able to block these signals. And I suspect that it's not hardware failure, shall we say, that these Starlink communicators aren't working. I suspect that the Russians are, you know, using some of their techniques for electronic warfare. And that's interesting. Very interesting. The Russians apparently are really leading the field with electronic warfare right now. They've got some powerful stuff going on. And so that's something to keep an eye on. And I imagine it's causing great consternation for the West. And imagine great consternation for Elon Musk. But at any rate, so we're seeing that. And as I see it, it's, to me right now, while people are freaked out on a day-to-day basis on which bridge got blew up or which bird got taken, I see it as a long-term thing. I mean, think about it. When you think of the World War II, right, you may think of you can think of a particular action that happened, right? The whatever, and they might have made movies about something that happened, right? There's some particular battle, some particular whatever, right? But when it came down to it, what do people look at? You either won the war or lost the war. When it's over, when the history books are written, you either won the war or you lost the war. All of these things that we go through, these emotional imbalances over on a day-to-day basis, yeah, they get people freaked out. But in the end, you either won the war and you lost the war. And I still believe, based on everything that I've seen, based on the experts that I've listened to, I still believe the Russians win this one. I think that they were fighting with one hand tied behind their back and by choice. And I think they're untying that hand. And I think we will see some more heavy firepower. So we shall see where that goes. So my suspicion is the Russians are going to win it. And they are preparing that they weren't going to put the kind of force in for a decisive victory like they're doing now, but that's what I think they're doing. They're building up a force for a decisive victory. I think, my opinion, the Russians would like to end this before the end of the year. And again, all the timing in the middle of the winter, the West is going to be reeling in so many ways economically. They're going to be reeling physically from the cold and the inability to afford a lot of fuel and electricity and things like that. And with the knowledge See, they're talking about making it through the winter with the knowledge that even when the spring gets here, life ain't getting no better. Now, I mean, if you don't have gas in the winter, well, you ain't got it in the spring either, do you? Okay, here's the difference. You won't freeze to death. But what else? Well, all the rest of the stuff. Hey, bad news, no lights again tonight. Good news is your toes won't fall off. You know what? If I got no lights, I might cut them off myself. For God's sake, take me now. You live in an apartment building. How's that going to work with no lights and no water? I mean, you're way up there. Your toilet ain't flushing on the 26th floor. Trust me. So here you are in Munich, in Berlin, in Paris, in London. No lights, no flushable toilets, no potable water. I mean, you are just back to you're back to the Stone Age. And it's what's ironic is how many times we've heard about NATO's going to bomb country X back to the Stone Age. We'll bomb them back to the Stone Age. We'll attack them. We'll put them back to the Stone Age. NATO's always going to put somebody back to the Stone Age. Isn't it interesting? NATO finally put somebody in the Stone Age for real. NATO. The NATO countries will be in the Stone Age. And of course, you know what that means. That means that NATO falls apart. So at any rate, let me continue. Why do I say that Joe Biden is the worst president in the world, in the history, and the worst leader in the history of humanity? This is a no-brainer. Here's why. Okay, the number one thing for humanity is to continue on our path of existence, right? I think that's an easy one. And if two countries who have the ability to end the existence of humankind go to war, then in fact, that's a bad thing. And it is incumbent upon the leaders of those countries to find a diplomatic solution, not to argue about who's right and wrong, right? We know what happened with Russia. The United States and its umbrella organization to take control of the European foreign policy, NATO, inched up to Russia's border. And Russia said what any superpower would say, you may be able to stay on our border, but you're going to have to fight to stay there. That's the bottom line. You may be able to stay here. We're not saying you can't stay there, but you're going to have to fight to stay there. So if you want to stay there, it's going to be you're going to have to see if it's worth the fight, because we're going to fight to knock you off. Let's see what happens. Well, and this is what makes it really worse. It's not just that some act of God happened, that some unforeseen incident happened, and somehow Russia and the United States got involved in this proxy war where the U.S. has a proxy war and a bunch of, what do you call it, cannon fodder on Russia's border that is thrown at Russia. The United States provoked this intentionally provoked this. The evidence is overwhelming that the U.S. intentionally provoked this in an attempt to weaken Russia, because Russia is getting too powerful. It's not working. In fact, it's having the opposite effect. But I'm still getting to why Joe Biden is the worst president in the history of humanity, the worst leader ever, because if in fact the goal for humankind is to continue to survive, then anything that would impede that goal, anything that would screw that up, anything that would cause humankind not to survive has to be addressed immediately, and that has to be mitigated, right? So as soon as you see that there's a comet coming towards the Earth that is going to kill us all, you got to figure out how to aim your nukes at it and blow it up and do whatever you can. You got to have a plan for this thing, right? Because it's going to end mankind, and that's not an option. Well, Joe Biden is running around now like an idiot talking about Armageddon, nuclear war, and all that kind of stuff, right? As though it's a legitimate discussion. Joe Biden's job right now is one thing and one thing only. There is jeopardy of the end of human existence. He's got one job: to mitigate that risk. He's got one job: to say, look, we don't want that to happen. Here's what we're going to do. The problem is this: not only is Joe Biden not mitigating the risks, Joe Biden is exacerbating the risk, and Joe Biden is the one that created the risk. They're the ones that did this intentionally. They caused this war. Now they created a war intentionally, and then they said it was unprovoked. Well, it was an unprovoked war, except that they're the ones who intentionally provoked it. So Joe Biden provoked a war with a nuclear superpower, refuses to take the actions necessary to end that war and stop the threat to human existence. right? And so excuse me, he started the war. He refuses to stop the war, and he's fueling the war. And let me add this: there was a time, we now know, that last March, April-ish, the Ukrainians and the Russians had a deal, and they were ready to step up to the plate and make that deal happen. What happens? In the form of Bojo, the Americans, they sent a puppet in, Bojo, and he stopped it. Why? Because they don't want peace, because these are the most dangerous people who ever lived. They are not worried about the nuclear annihilation. And see, here's the thing you got to understand about these psychotic neocons. The only thing they think about is power and force. Power is power until you use it, then it becomes force, right? So they're like power and force. And so they see what they see is their rule over the earth coming to an end. They're not like the Nazis. The Nazis felt like we need to take all of this stuff and rule the world. The neocons feel like we already rule the world, even though they don't. We already rule the world, and somebody's trying to take what we own. They're mafia. It's like a mafia, or it's like a street gang that says, these 4 square blocks here, we deal drugs and nobody else is allowed to deal drugs. And if you come in, we'll kill you, right? That's the US. China and Russia are coming in, and the US is going around the world stealing people's stuff, dominating, doing horrible, terrible things. And Russia and China has created another option. And the neocons are willing to risk the end of human existence to try to maintain hegemonic power over the world, and they don't even have it. It's already gone. That's the dirty little secret. They're trying to stop a multipolar world order in a multipolar world. That's it. We've got a multipolar world, and they're trying to stop a multipolar world order. Well, it doesn't take a Nostradamus to predict that that's going to be a failure. So that's where we are. At any rate, thanks everybody. I'm out of here. Wanted to have a little bit of a talk with my dear friends today. I was very, very, very busy. I'm tired. I went to that Assange event, and I went to a family event actually. A relative had an event, and I wanted to thank everybody and for following the channel and supporting the channel, and just make a statement about the Crimea Bridge. Look, it's if it's a game of soccer, somebody took a shot at the goal and missed. The other team took a shot at the goal and they scored. Okay, the scores, but realistically, if it's a soccer match, the Ukrainian side just scored a goal. They're still down 9-1. So you can get upset. Oh no, they scored. They're still down 9-1, and it's in the fourth quarter. So, it's still I think the end of what's going to happen is inevitable at this point, in my opinion. And I don't believe that NATO will intervene. I do not believe that NATO wants to get in this, because they know how it ends up. And those rich people don't want to die in a nuclear war. So I think we're looking at a circumstance where going to be an interesting winter. But don't get jumpy from day to day over who freaking stole Lehman or whatever, or who took, I mean, some of these things are as simple as, like, there's a clump of houses and a bunch of Ukrainians like walk up, and the Russians have booked out of that area, and they're like, okay, we've got this hamlet now. And everybody goes, oh no, they just took another hamlet. Yeah, it's going to happen. You know what I mean? But over the course of this thing, keep an eye out at what's going. And I think we're looking at a very soon a turn of events within the next month or two. We're going to look at a turn of events. And what I'm not even as focused, be quite honest. I'm not as focused on that. My focus is on the economic situation, in particular in Europe, and starting with the UK. Number one, UK, number two, Germany, and then all of Europe, because they were out in force today in Germany screaming for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and because there's another segment of it that is still operable. Somehow, when the Russians blew up their own pipeline, they didn't know there was another segment. Those darn Russians, they just can't blow themselves up like they want to. But at any rate, so the thing to watch is economics in Europe, because that's going to drive what happens from the West. And I think what you're going to see is two things. You're going to see fury by the people as the Europeans start to come to grips with what their leaders have done to them. You're going to see fury, likely some level of violence. but you're also going to see a crumbling. I think the EU and NATO have written their own epitaph. They've given them they've punched their own death ticket. There's no way that leaders can show blatant and reckless disregard for the economic health of the people in their respective countries and survive this, and there's not a dramatic political changes. So all right, let's take a look, because some of us may be tired, and we're going to look at the super chats. Edward Bernays says, the most disturbing element of this conflict is the unwavering determination from the very start to sacrifice Ukraine in order to destabilize and destroy Russia, a totally irresponsible objective. I agree with you 100%, Edward Bernays, 100%. It's like, and you got to ask this question, who's thinking about the Ukrainians? Now the Nazis, I ain't thinking about them, but the rest of them, come on, man. Come on, man. As old Dark Brandon would say, Sparky says, great work, Colin. Keep on trucking. Thanks a lot there, brother. Hey, safety Texas trucker, salty Texas trucker, all the leftist policies of the West are anti-human. You know what? And again, we got to have this talk, guys. I got to have this talk about ideology. I got to have this talk about labels. For instance, leftist policies, right? What has happened is that the neoliberals have been branded by people who aren't neoliberals as leftist, right? But you got to ask yourself, right? For instance, the left, there's certain properties that are left. So now the lefties don't agree or in any way support organized labor and unions. Those are lefties. Lefties are pro-war. Now those are lefties. Lefties are pro-corporate. Traditionally, lefties are anti-corporate, right? So now we have the neoliberals, a group of people who despise the left every bit as much as a MAGA. They hate. What happened with Kareem Jane Pierre, whatever the hell her name is, the other day? She comes out and the Biden people are like, the people at the border are running from communism. No, they're running from imperialism. We destroyed their countries, and now their countries are destabilized, and they're showing up at our damn border, right? So people who would call Joe Biden the left, right? Joe Biden is anything but left. But now the neoliberals have been successful in rebranding neoliberalism as left. I argue this: neoliberalism, neoconservatism is neither left nor right. It is a version of fascism. Keep in mind when you study fascism, fascism borrows rhetoric from the left, borrows rhetoric from the right, borrows rhetoric from everywhere. What a fascism will do is it'll say whatever they think the working class wants to hear. It'll say whatever they think the people who are the, what's the term we'll call it? The people who are into culture, the culture war, whatever they want to say, that's what fascism will say. Fascism will say any damn thing. It'll identify as left, right, middle, anywhere it needs to identify, because it doesn't care. It's like this. If you say to me, Garland, will you lend me something for $100? Or if I say whatever, right, and I make an agreement, if I don't plan on keeping my word, I can tell you anything. Yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'll give you 3 times your money back. Just lend me $100. When will you give it back to me? Before the end of the day. It's all lies. But I can, if I don't plan on keeping my word, I can lie all the time. That's what fascism does. Constant lies. In my opinion, Biden and his people are fascists. There's nothing left about them. And really, there's nothing but so much right about them. They're damn fascists. So they say whatever the hell they have to say to get what they want. That's what it is. So leftist policies in the West, well, I don't know. Give me an example. What you'd have to say is, give me an example of a policy that I can look at and I can say, based on the traditional, well, the not traditional, the foundational. What was the left? Well, that was simple. It was simple. In the French Parliament, if you literally sat on the left side of the room, you tended to be, you opposed the status quo, you opposed the monarchy, you stood up for the working people, for the commoners and or the peasants. Few people stood up for the peasants. If you literally sat on the right side of the room, you stood up for the status quo, for the monarchy, for the nobility class, right? Literally. Depending on which, that's why they say people sit on the left or sit on the right. You stand on the left, or you left or right. It was left or right was not metaphorical. It was a physical where you sat determined your policies. So now you can say leftist policies according to the traditional argument would be policies that oppose the status quo. Well, they don't oppose the status quo, and they are not on behalf of the working class, the working poor, the commoners, the peasants, nothing. These are policies to do nothing but reinforce the people who are in power. That ain't left. In the in the traditional standards by which you would judge left and right, they would sit on the right side of the room. Now, I'm not saying that's left or right by today's standard, but I'm saying people got to wake up to start realizing that the term left has been bastardized by these people. Left and right doesn't mean what it used to be anymore. So we got to try to understand it. Are we using the traditional definitions and standards used to evaluate left and right, or are we simply saying the people who are in the, let me put it to you like this. People use the two parties. The Democrats are the left, the Republicans are the right. Well, if you believe that, you are totally misled. That's all my point. If you think the Democrats are the left and Republicans are the right, and that's your standards, I'm sorry, that ain't any standard at all. In fact, they're just two corporate parties. They're two brainwashed cults. Let's continue. Oh, I think we might. Let's go here. Thanks a lot. Great. I'm glad you said that, Salty Texas Trucker. Great point. Great point of discussion. I'm going to have to do a whole show on that. How about Pagel, the Lesser 1977 says, Russians are slow to get on their horses, but when they do, they ride like greased lightning. Yes, you are right. You are right. And they're moving slow and they're thinking slow and deliberate. They acted with deliberation. Landers 15 says, looking forward to you and George tomorrow. Two great minds. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to going on George Galloway's show tomorrow, and I hope he doesn't get dropped out like he did before. Thanks a lot, Pogel the Lesser. Let's see, who else do we? Oh, okay, we got more here, and we're going to get to we are going to get to Rockfin. So stand by, Mr. Nixon. I wish I visited the event and met you. And Mr. Ritter, where and when is the next event? I don't know, but thanks a lot, Rashid. I will let everybody know for sure. We got to stay up. We got to stay up for our main man, Julian. Loved your speech in D.C. today, Garland. Thanks a lot, Kinky. Were you there, Kinky? I don't know. I've never met Kinky. I wonder if Kinky was there. I don't know. Maybe it was online. How about this? There's video and BitChute of truck at security checkpoint showing a driver. Okay, so there you go. I don't know what the hell's going on. But again, we don't know. What happens if there was a bomb on a train? What happens if the train blew up and there was a bomb on the train and they don't want us to know, Russians don't want us to know that somebody booby trapped the train? So we don't know. But still, we don't know yet, right? So, but yes, I'm hearing that there was a truck. Epic job today. You're the man, Garland. Thanks a lot, ZB. Zach Boyle, certainly thank you that. Oh man, they're here today. TC Blondie, free Julian Z. Oh, that's great. All right, so let's look. Anybody else? Did I miss anyone? I don't think I did, which means we're going to Rockfin. We're going to Rockfin. And on Rockfin, let us go. All right. All right. Mariah M. tipped me, and I'm going to read. So Mariah M. has a long one. Let me read it. Hi, Garland. I've been arguing with liberals who don't seem to understand the gravity of nuclear war. Yeah, God. They seem to be convinced that it's not a big deal and they can shelter in place and order takeout. Yeah, exactly. It's like COVID or something, lockdowns. They'll stay home. They'll call DoorDash, and then before you know it, they'll be called. And yeah, you know, these idiots. Nuclear weapons will end human civilization. I don't know how else to explain this. They're deluded by MSM. You see, I'm wondering if many of these MSC anchors have bomb shelters tucked away. But think about this. Let's be honest. What the hell good's a bomb shelter going to do you? What good's it going to do? Really? You're like, hey, okay, I'm rich. Ha, ha, ha. Got it made. I'm going to the bomb shelter. Well, first of all, like if Russians fire, what do you got, 20 minutes? So what are the odds if you have a bomb shelter right now? What are the odds that you're 20 minutes from that bomb shelter, especially if you're rich? The odds are you're somewhere else. You're in Florida, you're in New York, you're in downtown New York, wherever, you're somewhere. Hey, bad news. The bombs are fired. How much time we got? 20 minutes. You call up your chauffeur. Hey, how long we get to the bomb shelter? we're in Zurich, sir. There's nobody. Wait, no, I'm sorry. We'd have to fly back to the United States, and then we'd have to go to Connecticut, where the bomb shelter. That's about 2.5 days. We got 20 minutes. The reality is, what are the odds if Bill Gates has a bomb shelter in God only knows where? What to say, Washington, in let's say Seattle. What's the odds in any given day that Bill Gates is in Seattle? You would have to know a bomb shelter really to do you any good. You would have to know when the missiles were going to be fired, and you would have to be 20 minutes from your bomb shelter so you'd have enough time to get there. And this still, it might not be lucky. And after that, okay, great, the bombs are up, everything's destroyed above me, and I'm in a bomb shelter. What the hell do you do now? What do you do? Hey, I'm in a bomb shelter. I might argue if the whatchamacallits are hitting, I'd rather be in the initial blast and be gone. The hell with a damn bomb shelter. You're gonna sit in there and you're gonna eat what? Powdered milk and powdered eggs. Yeah, we've got stuff. We've got all this food. It lasts for 25 years. It's good. Okay, great. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to sit in this bomb shelter. I can't really go outside. Well, really, how much time do you have? Well, I think the particular type of radioactive material has a half-life of 25,000 years. We can come out in 50,000 years, right? What are you going to do meanwhile? Well, I don't think we'll live 50,000 years, but we'll sit in this bomb shelter with all of these people in the bomb shelter, and we'll eat freeze-dried bullshit. That ain't no life. No thanks. Take me out in the initial blast. So to me, I mean, hey, rich people's got a bomb shelter. Really? Not only this, what are they going to do? Have a giant bomb shelter, and they've got their security guards, right? Hey, we got security guards at the bomb shelter. All right. About 3 or 4 months after the initial blast, the security guards are going to start looking at each other and saying, you know, I've been thinking. Here we are working for these bastards, right? They're all rich, fat pieces of shit. And we're here and we got guns and we're supposed to be security guards, but we're in a bomb shelter and nobody can go outside because we'll be immediately nuked, which means there's nobody outside to come in. So who the hell are we protecting them from? Number one. Number two, I just recognized something. We're the guards, right? That means we got guns. Yeah, but they don't. And they're rich, but they're not rich anymore because outside there's no banks. Outside there's no money. There's no gold. There's no ATMs. There's nothing. We are in here and it's now dog eat dog. And we are the security guards with the guns, and them sons of bitches ain't got no guns. And we've only got enough. If we watch the rich people and we guard something for them, which they can never pay us because there's no way to pay anybody anymore because everything outside is destroyed. If we do that, at some point we all run out of food and die. And by my calculations, we got 5 years worth of food. So here's what we do. Let's go shoot all the rich people and we'll live off of that food, and it'll last us 10 years instead of 5. Good idea. They're going to go in there and shoot the rich people, or maybe freeze their bodies so they can eat them later. Who wants to be part of that? If that's what you want and you're rich, go for it. I wouldn't want any parts of that. No thanks. So the bottom line is this: I'm not overly concerned about the rich people having a bomb shelter because I just don't think that's going to work out all that well for them. Let us continue. Is there someone else? I know there's someone. I guess there isn't. Oh, here we go. Hugh Durkham says nothing. Just gave me a tip. Thanks a lot, Hugh. I really appreciate that. Hugh is a cool name. Much cooler than Garland. Well, you all. Thank you very much. I'm going to get my act together and crash. And I thank everybody. Don't forget, you see everything scrolling across the street. The screen, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. That's me. And make sure that you're a Rockfin member. You can subscribe. I certainly appreciate it. You don't have to. It's free. If you can't afford the $9.99 a month of subscription, do not worry about it. Just take the free membership and you're good. But if you can do the $99 a month, what that does give you is everybody on Rockfin, you can see their premium shows. And I do one premium show a month, 9 o'clock. A week, 9 o'clock every Wednesday morning. I do a 1-hour show with Scott Ritter, and that's my premium show. The $9.99 a month allow you to see that. But if you can't, don't worry about it. You'll see everything else I got. But when we have to do a premium shot, and I hear rumor, I don't know, that the Duran is moving to Rockfin. Oh, well, that will be so awesome because Rockfin's awesome. The Duran's awesome. All right. Also, I got Cash App. You can see it right there. Buy me a coffee. I certainly appreciate that. /Garland in with an H on the end. I don't know what the hell that H is about, but Garland in for buy me a coffee is great. I certainly appreciate anybody that can do anything to help keep the channel going. And I think that's it. Buy me a coffee. PayPal, the information's there, garlandin@gmail.com. Um, Patreon, anybody that can help, that's great. Thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, smash that like button. You know, I remember something when I was a kid, because my mom was from down south, and I'll never forget. I was a little teeny kid, and I'd never heard a Southern accent before. And back then, and somebody was taking a family picture. We were like out in the yard. They were taking a family picture with a phone, with a regular camera back then. Imagine that. And whoever our relative from down south was trying to push the button, and the button on the camera wouldn't push. I'll never forget, because the way she said it, I'd never heard a Southern accent. I was like 4 or 5, right? And she goes to push it. She looks, she goes, "It won't smash." And I'm like, "Smash?" And I'm thinking, I mean, I couldn't, actually, believe it or not, when I was about 5 is when I started reading and writing. My sisters and all kind of taught me, and I was reading and writing very early. But I remember thinking, "Smash? What the hell kind of word is smash?" I was only 5, and I'm like, "It won't smash." And later on, I realized we probably sounded weird to her, saying, "It won't smash." Gee, perhaps we should do something about that. What do you think there? Call Jeeves. Jeeves, bring me my wine. No, not really. But at any rate, you get the point. All right. Thanks a lot, you all. I'll be back on tomorrow, and I'll have something to talk about in the morning, no doubt. And of course, good old what's his name? I'll be on George Galloway show. Thanks a lot, everybody, again, and I certainly appreciate all those who do the things necessary to keep the channel going. Peace. I'm out.